can being misunderstood your whole life prepare you to understand the world more deeply?
I would have found happiness on a different level. It's been a rough go. I love my mind and I could have thrived. I could have contributed to the world in a much greater way, perhaps.
Hey, it's Julie. Welcome to Uncomfy, a show about sticking with moments that challenge us even when they're uncomfortable. And I know you're probably wondering, why would anyone choose to be uncomfortable? But I know from personal experience, and you probably do too, that sometimes a little discomfort has benefits if we can stay open and curious about it. And that is what we are here to explore. So let's get uncomfy. In the United States, around 1 in 30 kids are identified with autism. For adults, it's about 1 in 45. Awareness about autism has come a long way thanks to better public health outreach, more screening, and strong advocacy efforts. But even with all of that, there are still many adults out there who may have autism and have never been identified or were maybe misdiagnosed earlier in life. Well, today I'm joined by Dawn Prince-Hughes. She's an anthropologist, a primatologist, and author, and she currently serves as co-chair of the Cultural Autism Studies Program at Yale. She was identified with autism at the age of 36. Dawn, welcome.
So good to be here, and I love the concept of getting uncomfortable.
Well, it's something you know very well, I'm sure, which we'll dig into. I need to start by saying that you wrote a really beautiful memoir. It's called Songs of the Gorilla Nation, My Journey Through Autism. You were about 20 when you started working with gorillas at the Woodland Park Zoo in Seattle. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I had to leave home at about 15 or 16. The bullying, I mean, I don't even like the word bullying. I mean, torture is really, I think, what we should start using because that's what it is. I was so weird and so different and unapologetically so that I dealt with some actually life-threatening situations. So I ended up leaving home in my mid-teens, and I wandered around. I was homeless off and on for about 5 years. I ended up in Seattle, as you know, and this is still common among autistic youth that are homeless. I ended up in the sex industry to survive. And the weight of the city, the lack of nature around me, the disconnected nature of the industry just was sucking my soul. So I realized I needed to find nature somewhere. And I ended up going to the zoo, which was really difficult. For most people, you just hop on a bus, right? Pay your fare, get there, pay to go in. I mean, all that was a nightmare for me. But it underscores how much I really needed to be around living things with a primal soul. So I walked around looking at other animals, and then I turned the corner and saw the gorillas. And I just knew instantly that these were people who would understand me and that I would understand them. And that started a very long journey.
You spent so much time there that they ultimately gave you a job to observe and help
Oh, yeah.
help the people.
Yes, yes. I mean, to their credit, I pestered them mercilessly, and they ended up doing the positive thing. I'll always be grateful.
Yeah. So what's so fascinating and really beautiful is how you describe these gorillas teaching you how to interact with humans, with other people around you, and sort of helping you understand things that you had really struggled with. So you mentioned that you were weird, I think is the word that you used. What were the challenges that as you started to watch and observe the gorillas that you started to learn from them? What was something that came through to you that could be helpful in your own life?
Well, first, I'd like to say that early in my career, especially, I was criticized for anthropomorphizing, giving gorillas human tendencies. But in fact, for me, the opposite was true. I had to gorillamorphize human beings. There is no difference in personhood between gorillas and human beings, except that human beings, to a degree, we have more of an ability to make things up and believe them. I do think gorillas can remember and think abstractly, but the ways that humanity is able to make up things that aren't true and believe those things and use them as tools or weapons for further disconnection is really singular. So the way that I was able to learn how to be a person again through the gorillas is that they don't weaponize interaction in the same way. I was telling somebody the other day that etiquette is about the awareness that people are violent and have to constantly reassure one another that they mean well. That doesn't seem to be true generally of autistic people, and it certainly isn't true of gorillas. There's just a sense that we're in it together, and anything we do, anything we say, is taken as prima facie being for the good of the group. And in those conditions, I was able to relax and learn why people react the way they do to different things. So I approach my interactions with human beings on a very primal level, even still.
So, when you say you approach people in a primal way, what was something that you observed, some kind of a social interaction between gorillas that for you was a light bulb and you are able to, and helped you then to interact with other people? Can you recall a specific behavior?
No, it wasn't like that. I think what it was that I had always had the propensity to interact with people on a primal level, and the gorillas validated that. So there were certainly individual lessons about why people, what's funny. Like there has to be some fear there. Humor is based on just this a tiny bit of fear that turns out okay, if that makes sense. So I'd see the gorillas jump out and scare each other to play, for example. And I think, oh, I get more about human humor this way, like that there's this underlying fear. So yeah, little things like that, certainly. But just in a general sense, they validated my orientation toward connection.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a beautiful story you describe where you touched hands, touched fingers with a gorilla. Would you tell us about that and why that was so meaningful to you?
Oh, yes, Congo, who is to this day, the person I've been closest to in this life, a 500-pound silverback man. I was laying strawberries out for him along the windowsill, and he was sort of reaching through the grating there, flicking the strawberries into his mouth with his ginormous finger. and and he could eat faster than I could put them down. So at one point, our fingers touched, and it was one of the most spiritual moments in my life because I literally felt the 5 million years between us sort of telescope, almost like an event horizon, if I can use physics to describe it.
Hmm.
We were suddenly connected in space and time in a way that completely opened my perceptions and my heart. And I know he felt it too. They say you're not supposed to look in gorillas' eyes, but I do it frequently because they see me. There's nothing there to hide, there's no aggression there. I'm an open book. And in that moment, we were looking at each other's eyes, and it was a mutual experience.
Don, you were, as I mentioned, you were 36 when you were finally able to sort of identify, oh, I'm autistic, and to get a psychiatrist to validate for you that. We'll talk in a moment about what that process took for you. But prior to that point, you struggled with reading social cues. You describe also struggling with a lot of sensory overload and having, just describe a little bit more now in hindsight, sort of what you recognize as the markers of autism that made it challenging for you to exist in the world.
Sure. Okay. So here's the uncomfy part is that human beings, just do not know how to tell the truth. I remember the first time I saw those icons that they try to use to teach autistic kids happy face, sad face, mad face. And so you're supposed to believe that when someone has that on their face, but you feel that that's a lie. And so it's very confusing because you get taught you're supposed to support the lie. If someone is smiling, you're supposed to proceed as if they aren't dying inside. If someone's angry, you're supposed to pretend that they're not afraid. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. So I don't think that the problem was so much with me or other autistic people. The problem is in the level of masking, and I'll be generous and say unconscious deception in humanity.
And this is what you didn't see in the gorillas. They weren't hiding, they were being transparent. And that's part of why they made so much sense to you.
That's right.
Interesting. Okay, so let's talk about then coming to be identified as autistic. Why didn't it happen earlier? Why had you not seen a psychiatrist, for example, as a child?
So I was surrounded by a lot of people who themselves were weird, and I use that in the original form, kind of magical. Being around those people, we just cut each other a lot of slack, for one thing. And so when I started going to school, I had some people feel like, when I got to college, that I was odd, but it was attributed to my intelligence. So then I was again able to go under the wire. But then when I met my partner, it was really clear there were other things going on. And even then, I sort of limped along. But after Congo died, I kind of fell apart and started having a lot of meltdowns. And so my partner threatened to leave me unless I figured out what was going on. And with autistic alacrity, I set myself to the task and learned all about it, got files together, interviewed everyone I ever knew. By the time I actually called a diagnostician, I had a sheaf of papers about an inch and a half thick that was irrefutable, right? So she laughed about that because I was basically doing her job for her. She's like, I could have told you you were autistic because you did that. She's like, that's such an autistic thing to do in the first place.
And how did it feel to have that identification?
I was overjoyed at first. And this is a common pattern, actually. At my cultural program, we've figured this out that people's first reaction is a sense of great relief, validation, a sense of peace, like, oh, of course. And then you start going through the grief process because you realize people have been mean to you your whole life over something you couldn't help, something you shouldn't have had to help because it wasn't really a problem. It was a problem of context, not of self. So you go through anger and you go through, especially those of us who are identified later in life, have an enormous amount of grief about lost opportunities, see PTSD, and you're never going to get it back. You're never going to get it back. And that's a difficult thing to surmount emotionally. But what's been healing that, and I'm sure we'll get to it, is this sense of cultural belonging together.
I do want to talk about that. Um, would you mind sharing something, Dr. Prince-Hughes, that you think would have been different? What might have played out differently? Is there something that you think back on in your childhood or young adulthood where, oh, if only I'd had that autism identification earlier, I wouldn't have gone through that?
Sure, I think it runs from the simple to the profound. I simply would have been happy. I would have found happiness on a different level. It's been a rough go. I mean, I'm not just speaking for myself. It's torturous, as we said earlier, the bullying, the ostracizing, the self-doubt sometimes. So there's just the simple happiness factor, all the way to I love my mind and I could have thrived. I could have contributed to the world in a much greater way, perhaps.
Simply if you had understood. So just knowing that you were programmed differently, that it wasn't a defect of some sort, that would have allowed you to sort of be more comfortable in your skin and in the way of being that you were.
Yes, no one can survive or thrive as a culture of one. This is the power of culture. But, there's this pervasive myth that autistic people have a difficult time with social cues or connecting, and that is so, so, so wrong. If I could get people to take one thing away today, it's that we thrive together. And it's so interesting from an anthropological perspective because whether someone's from Kenya or Portugal or Brazil, we get online and we understand each other past our parent cultures. There's this sort of unspoken awareness that we're in it together. It's this non hierarchical, egalitarian, connected sense that we are larger than the sum of the parts, that we together make up this larger mind in the ether, and that we want to know the truth. We want to know the truth at any cost. We want to know the truth about ourselves. We want to know the truth about how the world works. We want to know the truth about how to be better and how to pursue justice. And that takes an obliteration of ego to a certain extent. Not that you totally lose yourself, but it's an expansion into something greater that's alive. And everybody gets that. It's a beautiful thing.
So, what kind of change, societal or political or otherwise, would allow for more autistic individuals to find their people, to learn of their identity, to be identified as autistic, and to be able to thrive in an autistic culture?
We need autistic involvement, obviously, nothing about us without us. I'd love to see panels of autistic people really, be in charge or at least in cooperation with diagnosticians who don't understand it from the inside out. Secondly, and this is the uncomfy part again, we are at the end of the line. Everyone feels it. We can get mad about politics. We can try to make it about world events. Yes, and underneath that is this awareness that the earth itself is dying. We have got to readjust as a whole with everyone to reassessing how we think of animals and the living environment and our problems, really just everything. We've got to rethink everything. And through history, this is what autistic people, I think, have been good at. Whether that shows up in the inventors, the philosophers, the deep thinkers that autistic people can be. We have, many of us, skills to help everyone. That's our goal. That's why so many of us are obsessed with justice, because we feel it all as ourselves and we want other people to feel that too. And once that happens, the whole way we look at problems is going to shift.
Dawn Prince-Hughes is an anthropologist, a primatologist. I highly recommend her memoir, Songs of the Gorilla Nation, My Journey Through Autism. She's currently co-chair of the Cultural Autism Studies Program at Yale. Dr. Prince-Hughes, thank you so much for sharing your story and for your work.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
And thank you for getting uncomfy with us today. I would love to hear how this conversation resonated with you. Have you ever found clarity through a period of confusion or isolation? Have you come to understand yourself more deeply by embracing discomfort instead of avoiding it? Share your story with us. Email uncomfy@byu.edu or connect on social media. Uncomfy is a BYU radio podcast. Samuel Benson produces it, and the team includes Hyobin Kim and Sam Payne. Our theme music was composed by Kelsey Ney. I'm Julie Rose. Can't wait to get uncomfy with you again next week. Julie here. Just one more thing before you go. If you're a mom or if you know a mom that could use a little backup, there's a new podcast from BYU Radio you'll want to hear about. It's called The Council of Moms, and it's all about the real, messy, beautiful moments of motherhood, from picky eaters and bedtime battles to the deeper stuff like anxiety and raising resilient kids. The show is honest, funny, full of heart. These are moms who get it, and they're showing up to support each other and support you. So if you're feeling a little overbooked and underappreciated, this might be just the boost you need. You can find Council of Moms on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you listen.